Hello, this is Peter Morrissey from the Stockbury Dark. Working closely with my co-host Claes Almian from Stockholm, Sweden, we plan on bringing you truly dark stories from one side of the world to the other. We have been busy interviewing many of our friends from our world and subculture, stories dealing mainly with the occult, paranormal, and other dark topics. We really hope you enjoy these episodes as much as we do. What started as a spark from the mind of Claes has now certainly ignited a huge firestorm of stories that will surely keep you up at night. The Stockbury Dark can be found on iTunes podcasts, on our Facebook page, the official Stockbury Dark, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as our website, thestockburydark.com. We can be reached at thestockburydark@gmail.com. Please help us spread the word, and thank you for listening. This episode of the Stockbury Dark is brought to you by the Black Market Kitchen. The Black Market Kitchen is a meal service providing you with delicious, healthy, and clean meals. Do you live a busy life and don't have the time to cook, or do you just prefer the convenience of having your meals prepared? With a range of options to suit many tastes and dietary preferences, Black Market Kitchen caters to a wide variety of folks. Perhaps you want to lose weight, eat less processed and packaged foods, and or just improve your overall health. At Black Market Kitchen, they have developed an understanding of the types of foods athletes and active individuals need to fuel their daily activities. They offer vegetarian, paleo, and ketogenic compliant options in addition to their regular clean meals. The gourmet menu, consisting of perfectly sized portions, is updated weekly, providing customers with something new and delicious each week. It is their mission to make achieving your nutrition goals easier. No matter what your sport or diet, Black Market Kitchen wants to help you become the best version of yourself. Streamline your life and order up your meals. Black Market Kitchen offers statewide door-to-door delivery in Connecticut for a $25 fee. If you're local to the greater Waterbury area, stop in and try a fresh juice, smoothie, protein shake, or bulletproof coffee, and grab a few meals from the cooler. They have tons of healthy snacks to choose from, including their house-made keto bars, as well as raw and vegan options as well. Visit their website at theblackmarketkitchen.com. Sign up for the mailing list and have the weekly menu delivered to your inbox. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram at the Black Market Kitchen. The Stockbury Dark. My name is Pete Morrissey.
I'm Claes from Shipwrecked.
And today we're going to be interviewing Colin Young from the band Twitching Tongues. What's up, Colin?
How you doing? Hey.
Thanks for, Colin had a really late night flying in overnight and stayed up just to do the podcast with us. So, we have a lot of hours of difference between us, where Colin's 3 hours behind me and Claes is 6 hours ahead. So it's pretty tough to try to coordinate people from all across the world, basically. But we did it today. It's our first interview outside of ourselves, interviewing each other. So we're really happy to have Colin here today.
This feels fantastic. Thank you so much, Colin, for joining us tonight. This is the third episode of the Stockbury Dark, and we're recording in California, CT, and over in Stockholm, Sweden. Feels good.
I'm honored to be the first one.
We're honored to have you on.
Hey.
And so, we gave you a basic premise of the show where we're going to be interviewing a lot of people from our music scene and bands we know, and artists and whoever else. But the tone of the show is not really talking about maybe our music or our art, but more about stories that we have, anything from ghostly stories to the occult and experiences that we've had, where Klaas's story was, say, about growing up in a type of a haunted area in Sweden, and I spoke briefly about my out of body experiences and sleep paralysis that plagued me basically from my late teenage years up until now, and so we got a lot of friends with a lot of stories, and we're going to be touching on those,
Sleep paralysis is so fucked up, being maybe one of the only scientifically proven natural terror phenomenons,
Yeah. I've started, you'll hear the podcast when we release it, and, there's some really terrifying stuff that, just the graduation from how it started until how it is now in my mid 40s, where it's like 10 times worse than it was from when I was, 19.
How often does it happen?
Anywhere from once to 3 or 4 times a week.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It's pretty brutal, but it goes from the paralysis to and beyond,
Yeah. What's problematic with it in your case is that it links into the paranormal and also into hauntings, basically.
Yeah.
Which is tough for an individual to live with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nightmare.
Yeah, truly. Well, anyways, I don't know. You said you had some stories to share with us. I think it was something, maybe a tour story.
I do.
With the band and where you stayed. But we can get right into it.
Sure.
Anxious to hear it.
Let's go. All right. So in 2010, I was playing drums in a band called Alpha and Omega.
Mm-hmm.
And we were staying in Nashville at somebody's house who the singer Luis was friends with.
Right.
And there was like a party going on once we got there. So it was like an absolute free-for-all for, all right, wherever you can find to sleep, make it work. Or else you're fucked. So we walk in, and it's like a 4-bedroom house. It's pretty big. And Walter, of Rotting Out fame, was the bass player at the time. And he had the idea to go straight to the attic. And there was like a tiny little twin bed up there that he immediately took, that I was jealous of.
Mm-hmm.
So
what type of home was this place? Was it like an old home, or was it?
It definitely seemed old, just from like the way it was laid out, and then walking into the attic was where it was like, damn, this place is weird.
Did you get creeped out by it immediately when you walked upstairs?
So here's what it was that happened. In my desperate attempt to find another place to sleep, I walked up the stairs, and as soon as you get to the top, there's like a railing that you followed, and the stairs lead to just a wall, and you have to turn around to get around this railing to walk towards the one bed that's in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to the top of the stairs and take that right to follow along the railing, and somebody is walking by me towards the railing, so I'm not touching the railing, and I go as far as to out loud say, "Oh, excuse me."
Oh, so when you're saying somebody's walking by you, that was like a presence?
Yes. So I out loud say, "Oh, sorry, excuse me."
Uh-huh.
And like my body continues to turn to kind of track them as they walk by me, and then I come to the realization that there's no one actually there. So Walter hears me say, "Excuse me," and he goes, "What? Why did you say that?" And I just kind of sitting there frozen. Like, "Did you just see that girl up here?" And he was like, "No." So I kind of just ran downstairs. And it's one of those things where you're watching horror movies and such, and you see them see a presence or feel something, and they don't leave the house right away, and you're like, "Oh my God, I would have been out of there so fast." but you can't process it as something that's real at the time. So it's like, it's probably nothing. I'll be fine. But I feel so like fucked up now, because it's like, man, I'm trying to figure out if that was really something I saw, or if I could have just been tired and seeing things. But I walked downstairs, and the girl whose house it is was having a conversation with Luis, so she was easy to just talk to really quickly without having to deal with a bunch of people around us. And I just bluntly was like, "Hey, is your house haunted?" And it was like the scene in Pee-wee where Large Marge drops him off and he's in the bar, and the whole bar stops once he says Large Marge sent me.
Just complete silence here at Pindar.
Silence.
Yeah.
And she asked me, "Did you see her?"
Whoa.
Oh my.
So it immediately not only confirmed that the house was haunted, but that the gender I had seen was correct.
Wow.
And apparently a young woman had been haunting the house for several years, but they didn't have any crazy information on like what happened or who it could have been, or
no real backstory to it.
No, I'm getting chills right now just thinking about it and talking about it again, because it's been so long.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely I don't know if Luis will remember this when you guys talk to him on the show, but I definitely was like, dude, this just happened. Like this, I don't know. I might sleep in the van, but I ended up just sleeping on one of the couches downstairs, and that was it for the night. But the fact that there were so many people there, and I seemed to be that evening the only person to see something, was strange to me. Like how does a presence like that pick and choose
mm-hmm.
when and where they want to be seen, and by who?
Right. So no one else that was staying there that night felt anything or seen anything?
No, not that night. And there were like 15 or so people there, and
mm-hmm.
Walter slept up there and didn't see a thing.
Was there like a distinct look to her? Like, could you describe?
She was definitely like a young white woman with like long black hair and like a bluish white dress, so that it was like it was easy for me in that moment to distinctly be like, "Oh, excuse me, sorry, you can go ahead." And then,
and was it more in your like peripheral vision, or was it?
Yes, it was so. Yeah. But it was a peripheral vision, but like sometimes you're sure. Like, yeah. Okay, sorry. Like my body has been training me my entire life to avoid people when they're next to me. I know what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
So as I kept turning, it was just like, holy fuck. And looked down like towards the stairs, and there's just nothing. Like she disappeared as my body was turning to actually see her.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a feeling of any kind, like hostility or?
No, not at all.
It's sadness or anything.
Sadness might be it, but it just seemed like loneliness, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that she's shown herself so many times there, and it was a thing that they had all talked about before.
Was this a family home, or someone that do they just rent the home there?
No,
like
it was like a 2 or 3 hardcore kids, I think.
Yeah. And they had more than one instance where they've seen this apparition.
Like, did you see her? Is what she asked me, and my heart sank to my.
That right there alone sends like chills down my spine.
It was insane.
Like it's a commonplace thing, you know, to see the ghost. It's fun, going back to what you said earlier about why was I the only one?
Yeah.
To see her as opposed to why anyone else,
There's 20 people there. What good am I?
They say, obviously some people are more open and susceptible to seeing or feeling certain things. So, I mean, was that the first time you felt or seen something that you thought was a ghost or an apparition or a presence, or were there?
I think so, and maybe the first time consciously.
Mm-hmm.
And really the only time I've only had one weird thing, and I don't know that it was real since. And it'd be pretty funny if it was, because that would mean they're all. But another thing is we were staying. It was Twitching Tongues in Code Orange doing a European tour, and you know those venues where you just sleep like on a cot in the venue,
at the actual venue.
Like I'm sleeping on the stage where I just played, and
really miss Europe.
Yeah, and Code Orange was all. I think two or three of them were in the same room as me sleeping, and they go from a symphony of snores to immediately talking in their sleep at the same time, like the same second.
The band, the whole band.
It was three out of four of them at the time.
Wow.
So that was just like, yo, did you guys all just get possessed or what? And none of them knew what I was talking about the next day.
Did they make any like words that you understood, or was it just like gibberish?
Not a single, complete gibberish.
That's strange.
It was fucked up. Strange. They're possessed.
It's I never had really any ghostly encounters until later in life. Where like I said before, if you listen to the podcast, you'll hear some stories. But that. Where you see an actual physical human presence, where you can see their clothing. Contact. And I've had that, once when I was younger, the first time, and I was in my mid-teens, maybe 16, 17, and I just bought like my first mountain bike, and I went for this long ride all through Waterbury and some of the surrounding towns. And the first place I stopped was one of the old brass factories across town. And it was an abandoned factory, and I'm middle of the day, couldn't have been any later than 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I pulled up to one of the factories, and I'm sitting there on top of my bike, and I'm staring into one of the windows, and the sun was hitting it. It was a perfect reflection behind me. I could see everything in full color through the glass, right. And as I'm sitting there trying to squint my eyes, looking into the windows to see what's inside, I'm seeing the reflection behind me of an old man. He looked like he was in really good shape, though. He had pure white hair, but it was a full head of hair, and he had a work uniform on. And I was like, "Well, what's this guy? A security guard? Is he going to kick me out of here?" And I'm watching him approach me, and as I turn around, he couldn't have been 3 or 4 feet behind me. I turn around to talk to him, and there's no one there.
Holy shit!
And like you said before, it didn't really scare me because it didn't really register. I'm like, did that just happen? I just saw this man approach me. Like, where did he go? Just vanished into thin air.
You have no choice but to question it in your head as it's happening. Like, I could have not seen that. That could have not been real.
Yeah.
But then the memory sticks with you.
Well, now.
And the feeling
30 years. Yeah, over 30 years later, as I'm just talking about it now, if it's not even
makes you feel fucked up.
It makes me feel very fucked up. You're right.
Yeah.
That is like the feeling of it's like this confusion, and like I can't really
couldn't
describe.
Possibly have seen that, but I did.
But I did, and there's no doubt in my mind there was a human being approaching me from behind, who vanished.
So was he behind? Was he inside the building at first?
No, it was in the parking lot. So I'm looking into the building. There's a parking lot where I'm sitting on my bike looking into the windows, and he's approaching me from behind. I'm watching him approach me, like walking, just a normal walk, So I thought it was a security guard. Like I said, he had a uniform.
And then he got close enough and just bam.
As I turned around to greet him, because he looked like he was just right about on top of me. I turned around, no one there.
Wow. That's it. I guess they just, from our 2 experience, it sounds like they just like to disappear.
Yeah. So that building is long gone now. They knocked down a lot of these old brass factories, turned them into malls and whatever else. But
how far is that parking lot from where you live now?
It's actually right near. Did you ever go to where Shogun was screen printing? My old building.
Not. No, I didn't ever get to go.
It's like a halfway across town where the 100 Demons band room. It's in the same area where the 100 Demons band room is and Shogun. It was just a building down the street a little bit more, but the same right next to it all. You know, even the old brass factory where I had Shogun and 100 Demons. I've heard 100 ghost stories from those old factories. You know, because those places were in operation since, you know, the mid 1800s.
Right.
And there's a lot of tragedy that happened in those places. There was no safety regulations or
nothing was regulated. It was just,
people just getting consumed by machinery and dying and then disappearing, you know. So
what happened was that they were working and dying, especially with all the shit they were breathing in. So, I mean, there were guys that would be dying on the job, basically, and they knew that they were dying, but they would come in the day afterwards anyway, till the whole system went down the drain, basically.
Right.
And no one really cared about those guys. They would just fill their spots up the next day. They're gone. They're gone.
What I think is interesting when we talk about stuff like this is when whatever you decide to label it, whatever you decide to call it, is when the presence is in the shape of like a straight up physical form of a person, so to speak, a man or female. A very good friend of mine he actually lives in New York now. He's in advertising, and both his parents. Well, they're probably retired now, but they were in advertising too, and big in advertising during like the heyday in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
So without talking shit, I guess I could say pretty materialistic people. That's true, and my friend would agree with me if he heard this. They lived in an apartment in the old town of Stockholm. Have you toured Sweden, Colin?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Did you go to Stockholm?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So, I mean, the old town goes back to the Middle Ages, and that's where they lived in a big old apartment. When he was a kid, I think he's born in 1980. And what's special about my friend is that he was always, the family is super not religious, but he was always he was always like a Christian. It's like his grandparents weren't Christians either. And then, say 10 years ago or something, he was back in Sweden, and they were celebrating Christmas together. And I think his dad asked him, it's like, it's cool that you're a Christian and everything, but where does that come from? Because our family is not religious at all.
Yeah. And
he said, shout out to Eric if he's listening. Eric said, well, when I grew up, and when we lived in the old apartment in Gamla Stan, the old town, I always felt that God would look at me from my cradle in the forms of an old man with a white beard, and he would come and play with me in my room, etc., etc.
Jesus Christ!
And
exactly
the whole family, and he said, I mean, his family, the other guys in his mom and dad and his sister got all silent. And Eric was like, it wasn't hostile or anything, like it was God. Mm-hmm. And they said, we never told you guys that when you were little because we didn't want to scare you, but the old apartment that we lived in, everyone always said that it was haunted. And it was like an old man, janitor or whatever it was, who lived there, and people said for generation to generation that he came to visit them and like try to get contact with them.
Wow.
And my friend, obviously Eric, freaked out, but like then it had been so long since they had lived there. But we're talking about a presence, in this case in the form of a man who Eric felt that he could talk to, and like, I mean, to describe the beard and the hair and the color of the facial hair, everything.
And it's that same thing with me, where it's like what you're about to say is reassured before you can even say it.
Yes.
And that's so insane.
How old was Eric when that was happening to him, Klaus?
I think he was I can't swear, but I think he was pretty much born in that apartment, and say maybe they left when he was 12 or 13, maybe.
Wow.
That's
Does he know how long it happened while they were there?
He never said, but there's a different story that I, for some reasons, can't go into. But what's going on in that house, in that apartment, has continued, and it's continuing till this day.
Wow.
And there are people that have suffered from, they're suffering from mental illness because of it. Because maybe.
So it's not necessarily a benevolent presence there?
Sorry, come again?
It's not necessarily a benevolent presence there?
It's a presence, and I mean, the way you described it earlier, Colin, like, whatever this is, maybe it will be hostile towards some of us and friendly towards others. I mean, who knows? But there's, after they left, there are people that have lived there that has absolutely faced hostility, straight up hostility. Yeah.
And was it the same? Maybe the same description of the spirit.
I think so.
With these people too.
I think so.
Yeah, that's a lot of children have these sightings, and especially as they in their youngest ages, where there's their so-called secret friend or whoever, where the parents will walk in and catch them talking, just like in a movie. You'd see a child talking to somebody in the room.
Who are you talking to?
Introducing, but that more so than not, that those are real happenings with a lot of kids that can go back to their child. I have quite a few friends who've told me these same stories where they would describe this person and they thought it was a family member who was taking care of them, or a grandmother. Where one of my good friends is a pretty famous guy, and hopefully we'll get him on the show one day to tell a story. But he said for years, from when he was like 2 to 6, there was a woman who lived in his mother's bedroom, and he always assumed it was his grandmother, and he could describe her perfectly. And she wore a black dress, and she visited him all the time. And she would soothe him and comfort him. And whenever he was upset, he would go to that room, and she would take care of him. And for years, he assumed it was a family member.
Wow.
And he would describe this to his mother later on in life, and she had no clue what he was talking about. He would swear on his life that this was real. This wasn't just like once or twice. This was going on for years.
This was a consistent thing?
Yeah.
Years, wow. And then he never talked about it with his mom?
No, not because he was at such a young age. I think it was,
He was still plastic and just like learning about life?
Yeah. And then it probably stopped at some point when he was still really young and just never thought about it until maybe as he got older. It's like, where did that person go? I remember her so clearly. Who was she? And started coming with all these questions, and no one in the family knew what he was talking about.
Wow.
I think it's very interesting when it comes to kids, because I'm not saying anything about my house, about the apartment where I live, but I have a corner in my living room where my bulldog used to sit. My bulldog used to sit and stare at the corner, and sometimes bark at it. And then when I had my kid 3 years ago, she's been talking to that corner. She looks at it and she talks to it.
You gotta move.
No. It's like there's nothing scary or hostile about it whatsoever. It's almost a weird thing to say, but it's almost comforting in a way. And I don't know what it is, but it's the exact same corner. She doesn't do it as much as she used to, but I definitely believe that kids have a connection to things that.
Have you asked her about that?
No. And I mean, she used to talk to that corner a lot, but I mean, if I would ask her, she turns 3 in a couple of weeks. If I would ask her,
so that memory's gone.
Probably, but also even now, if I would ask her who she's talking to, she could answer purple. Do you know what I mean? Or like, or if I asked again, she could say like, I want an apple. I mean,
yeah, I gotcha.
It's interesting.
It is.
So moving on, any other types of experiences you've had on tour, Colin, since that first sighting at that house?
Not quite, honestly, and that was something where that was like my first real U.S. tour,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like, Jesus, is this what? Is this gonna happen all the time? Like, is this real? It was
Your
my
first time
real,
out, yeah. And was that like at the beginning of the tour as well?
It was probably halfway. Yeah.
It's so funny being on tour, especially in Europe, because there's been some places where we've stayed, these like hostels or staying in the room at the club, which was like, I've stayed in some places that were right out of like a Scooby-Doo, like haunted house, with
They all are. Everything.
Wind and rain coming in through windows with these sheer curtains blowing everywhere, everything rattling, drips from the ceiling, and I'm just waiting for something to bust through the door or touch me coming out from underneath the cot I'm laying on. But I've never really had any like real like haunted or experiences out on tour, because anything I've usually experienced, sad to say, was always by myself and alone, which gives skeptics, some ammo when you're trying
and maybe that's the point. That's when it's scariest. So that's when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I don't know.
I think
I
too.
Yeah. I mean, we know what we've seen, and the fact that nobody else saw it, obviously, if somebody else did, it would just add that whole layer of like certainty. But I don't know. I felt it as well as saw it, and I'll never forget either the feeling or the sight. And then just talking to them after, when it was just like, okay, you
plain
saw,
as day, plain as day, like it's a common occurrence to them.
Straight up. That was
just
where
reinforcing.
Like, holy shit.
Yeah, that's got to be almost the scariest part to me. Someone just proving what you saw was real.
It was my heart sank to my balls, and it just, I couldn't sleep. I was just thinking about it the whole night. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Colin.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sorry.
What
were you gonna say, Klaus?
Did their reaction have an effect on you? Like, did they come off?
It made me certain.
Yeah.
It made me even more certain of what I just saw, because there's going to be that feeling of doubt. Like, come on, that couldn't have been real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I must have just been. My mind has never played tricks on me one time.
But
this must have been it.
Was her presence something that seemed to scare them, the people who were living in the house?
I think no, it really didn't. It seemed like she was just there. She wasn't there to hurt anybody. She just maybe couldn't go home, couldn't go anywhere else.
Might be a good topic for you in one of your new writings.
Yeah,
it is. It is. It's funny that you would ask. I asked Peter the same question if he's ever used his experiences when writing songs for 100 Demons.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, Peter, in your case, this had already started when you were in Forced Reality, right? Obviously, yeah.
Yep.
You got any sleep paralysis songs that are secretly?
I know I never hit on any like really like a supernatural or occult topic in any of the bands. In between Forced Reality and 100 Demons, I was in this band Higher Force, which was actually turned into 100 Demons. But it was me and Sean and Rich and Jeremy Bubba from 100 Demons, and some of the topics in those songs, I was really into like conspiracy stuff. This was like the early 90s, and and UFOs and ancient aliens and stuff like that. So I touched on a lot of topics like that, but never really got too deep with anything supernatural or personal. Yeah.
Right.
But I think we were one of the first bands to write about stuff like that in the hardcore scene, and
absolutely,
some alien core. But,
is that why the record never came out?
Yeah, the government stopped us, man.
That's right. I knew it.
You're releasing too many secrets.
Yeah, Quantico called and was like, "You guys need to hold the fuck up."
Yep. But anyways, thanks, Colin, so much for talking with us today. It was a very, very cool. With Colin from Twitching Tongues, who have a new record. When's the release date on that? March
9th, so about 2 weeks.
Yeah, and that's coming out on Metal Blade, right?
Yes, it is.
Right? Yeah, that's going to be. I heard the whole record now on vacation. We just came back from Barbados, and Sean, that plays in Twitching Tongues, played me the whole. He was on vacation with us, and he played the whole record for me. It's phenomenal, man. I love it. It's gonna be the next big thing. I know that's gonna happen. It really is.
That would be nice. I would love to be a big thing.
Yeah, you're gonna be a big. You already are a big thing. But really and truly, I don't enjoy a lot of newer music. I'm 46. I'm not that even jaded. I just know what I like. I don't really venture out of my comfort zone with some music sometimes, and of course I'm going to give it a listen because Sean's one of my best friend in the world.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. And he played such a huge role in it that and we've never had that real third puzzle piece before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he fits that. Fits this band like nothing else.
Dude, it just made things so easy. It was like, okay, this is who we are. This is what we're going to make.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
It's a phenomenal record. Very unique sound to it. Everything about it is top notch, man. I wish you the best of luck with the new release. And thanks so much again for having you on the show today.
I appreciate that, and thanks for having me.
We're playing together this summer.
Are we?
Are you guys playing this hardcore too?
Oh yes, we are.
Oh yeah.
Oh
nice.
wait.
Nice.
Ooh, I might not be able to announce that.
Well, this won't be out until after the announcement. So.
No, exactly.
Oh, okay.
I actually took that into consideration. So.
Okay, then yes, we are. Hey.
That's going to be old news by now.
All right, good stuff. Then yeah, we are. Well, we might be playing in Sweden in June too.
Yeah, you guys are going to have to hook up out there. You'll have a good time together.
Yeah, please come out.
We will. I will show you our versions of women in blue and black hair.
Oh no!
Haunting old places. Yeah.
All right, let's get frightened together.